Hello everybody. In this video I'm going to be talking about for loops in the Go programming language. I'm going to be going over the three different types of for loops, and I will talk about them starting from the basic ones that are going to be more familiar to people coming from other languages like C or C++. Um, or Java and languages like that. And I'm gonna go more into some of the more advanced for loop types that are unique to Go itself. So let's begin first by going over the basic for loop that I think most people will be familiar with. Before I do that, what I have here is basically an array of different integer values, and I'm just printing them out. So I'll go ahead and just show you the output before we begin. So this is the output. What I'll go ahead and do is start off by showing you the first for loop, which is basically starts off with the three different parameters. The first one is usually called I, which is used for a counter. So we usually initiate it to 0, and then we'll say we'll keep going. This is basically our condition statement. We'll keep going as long as I is less than the length of values, and then lastly we'll just increment it by 1. And here what we could do is basically print out what I will do is I would like to show you how the indexes are printed out. So I'll go ahead and do a formatted string here, and initially I would like to print the index, and then next to it I would like to print the actual values. So we'll go ahead and do values.index, and then let's go ahead and comment this line out and see what this outputs. Oh, and I also forgot \n, which will make a new line. So let's increase this and see our output. So our output is basically, so on the left hand side you can see the indexes, and on the right hand side you could see the output of the array. So here in index 0 there was value 1, which is right here, since this is a 0 based array, as all arrays are in Go and all languages basically. Here at index 1 we had the value 2, and so on and so forth. So this is just a for loop, basic one that most people are familiar with. I'm not gonna go into too much detail and spend a lot of time on it. I'm gonna go over the next for loop, which is a little bit more unique to the Go programming language itself. And it basically functions kind of similar to a while loop in Java, for example. Basically how it looks like is, let's say you have a variable called, before I do this, let me just comment this for loop out so that we don't get different printouts. And let me close this console. So let's say we have a variable called counter that we initialize to 0, and then we do a for loop that says we'll keep going as long as counter is less than the length of values. So basically what this for loop does, it will basically function as a while loop that will evaluate this. As long as it's true, it will do whatever is done inside of here. One thing we should do right away is increment our counter, otherwise this would turn into an infinite loop, just as any while loop would do in any other language. So it's important to remember to increment it here. And basically this will just keep evaluating until counter is no longer less than length, in which this for loop will actually end and will eventually exit out of it. So inside of here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing, print out the same values, but instead of having the variable I here, I am going to put counter. So this will be basically functioning as our index. And let's go ahead and run it, see what comes out. So again, we have the same output as we did before. Counter, when it was at 0, we used it as an index placeholder right here to access the value, and it gave us 1, and so on and so forth. so it will just keep going. And this is, like I said, it functions like a while loop, so it's kind of nice that instead of having different keywords to know for each type of loop, it's nice because you eliminate basically um, an increment variable right here. A counter variable right here, and then an increment placeholder right here. You just have an evaluation, and as long as that evaluation is true, the for loop will keep going. So this is the second for loop that I wanted to go over. Let's move on to the next and the third for loop that I wanted to show today. And this one is the most interesting one because it uses a new keyword in the Go programming language called range. So let's go ahead and take a look. So if I want to increment or iterate through my array of values via index and value, what I could do is say index value, so for each index and value, in which will equal, we'll use the equal assigning I forget the word. Basically, we'll make those two variables equal to the keyword range, and we'll have that range count values array. And basically what's happening here is you're telling the for loop to extract all of the indexes and values into these two values. And the way it does that is I'm about to show you. So we'll go ahead and place the index with index, and here will be value. Well, actually, no, we don't need that. We can just print value. And I'm about to show you what's going to happen. So here it's the IDE I'm using. It's saying that it's redundant parentheses, and basically what it wants me to do, it wants me to do this. This is kind of a shortcut for Go. I personally like to write it like that because it's more verbose and it's easier to read. So let's go ahead and print this out and see what comes out. So again, the same values. However, what I like most about this for loop is that it extracts the index and values into those two variables, and there is kind of a magical thing that happens here in this assignment statement because a key feature in the Go programming language is that any function, so range is basically just a function, any function in Golang has the ability to return more than one value. So I could have a function called sum that returns a and b separately. Let's say a is int and b is integer, and I return two types of integers. That's possible, and this was something that was a little bit weird to me at first because usually we like in a language like Java, for example, you can only return one thing. So this is kind of strange, but the reason this for loop is working the way it is because of this exact functionality or feature in Golang, is that range gives us two different return types, an index and a value, and we store them right here in these two variables, in which we can access right here. So the nice thing in this for loop is that we don't kind of manually specify our indexes like in the variable name that holds our array values itself like this. It's kind of cleaner because we just have access to the index and value as two separate values. So yeah, this has been pretty much all that I wanted to talk about today. I thought the way this for loop is designed is very elegant and nice, and I felt like It's easier to explain in a video than some of the online tutorials I've been seeing. So anyways, I hope this video was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments, and yeah, I hope you learned something.